Gary and Lou and the rest of the elders for entrusting me with this weighty responsibility. And whilst I get my butterflies to fly information, it's amazing. I public speak for a living, and stick me behind a pulpit and I'm a wreck. So, first things that I want to do is, I think let's just give some credit where it's due. Today I'm taking an adaptation of a preach that originally John Mark Comer did at Bridgetown, and I'm giving a bit of a spin onto that. So, never met him, would love to meet him. I give you credit. And then my slides would have been an absolute mess, but for Louise, so credits go out right in the beginning. Just so that you understand where I'm going to go with this topic in terms of what our dual mandate is, and that you can track more or less where we're going to go today. I'm going to start off with Genesis chapter 1 and 2. Richard last week put a brilliant foundation down, and what I want to do is I just want to go a little bit deeper, and I want to add into that foundation. So we're going to start in Genesis 1 and Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to look at specifically what was the first job we as humans got. And we're going to look at this thing that the theologians call a cultural mandate. We're then going to hop into the New Testament, and we're going to look at Matthew 28, and we're going to see that Jesus gave us a second role. He gave us a new job as well. And then thirdly, it came up last week, we're going to land with practically, what does this look like? What does our dual mandate look like in ordinary life? And as you can see, we are having the Lifehouse version of Truth or Dare. So let's get going immediately. We've got some ground to cover. So Adam and Eve got this cultural mandate. They were given this great commission and to practically apply this dual mandate, and we're going to go to Genesis chapter 1, verses 26, and we're going to read through to verse 30. And I'm going to read from here because if I read from my iPad, I'm going to get lost. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the..." Oops, where did I go? "Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures moving along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. And let's move on to 29. Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth, and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food." The key in verse 30. "And all the beasts of the earth, and the birds in the sky, and all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath in it, I give every green plant for food," and it was so. So when we have a look at this, we are designed in God's image. So if we go back in time to the kings of the Near East, what they would do is they would reign and they would send out their governors into the provinces. And where those governors were, he would establish his image, his likeness, his statue out in those provinces. Why? Because when the governors that he's appointed, his prefects that he's appointed, stand and deliver the rules and the edicts, they're standing in line with those statues and with those images. so that it is the king himself speaking and issuing his decree. And the word would be established out in the provinces as though it was back home in the capital. Okay? And what does it say in Genesis chapter 1? Immediately, we will make man in our image. Why? We are God's reflection. So we reflect and mirror, and he has already said to us, what is our job as we reflect? We rule. He's given us that command. He's given us his power. I've given it to you to reflect and to rule. You will be in my image. We are to actively partner with God in taking the world somewhere. From the very beginning of the creation story, as we've just seen in Genesis chapter 1, what God is looking for, he's actively looking for partners. And the imagery of God in chapters 1 and 2 of Genesis, when you have a look at how he created man, he did not create puppets. If he wanted puppets, he would have created puppets on a string, but he didn't. He created Adam and Eve out of dust, and he said to them, go and partner with me. He uses king-like language when he says in theology we are created almost as co-rulers, co-regents, to be with him, ruling over the earth. This is exactly how God works. Now, if he wanted to, as I said earlier, he could have made more people. If he wanted to, he could have just said, here's mankind. But no. What did he say? He said, instead, I'm going to choose mankind. I want you to go out and be fruitful and multiply. Now, in our lives, that means we get married, we have sex, we make babies. By the way, to all of you young people, I'm not talking to you right now. That doesn't count for you yet. It'll come, but not now, okay? That part will come. And go and rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky. If he wanted to, God could have at that very point added bread from heaven if he wanted to. He could have added food if he wanted to. Just by the way, like he did in Exodus, if he wanted to. But he didn't. He stood back and he chose man to partner with him. And he created in man, and he said, go and subdue the earth. What was he saying? Become farmers, become merchants, become traders, invent technology, make bread yourself. And if we skip down to verse, hopefully I get there, verse 28, somewhere it should slide up. God said to them, be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth, subdue it, and at this point we get our cultural mandate and our first job description. He makes man in his image. And he says to Adam and Eve, go and subdue the earth. Or put it in another way. He says to Adam and Eve, what I want you to do is go and create a culture. Go and build something of what I've already put into you. And this cultural mandate now is going to break down into two callings, essentially. The first one is be fruitful and multiply. Make something of the social world. It means, obviously, as I've just said, get married and have babies, but it means, obviously, a whole lot more than that. He's saying to Adam and Eve, at the same time, whilst you're making babies and multiplying the earth, I want you to establish a social structure. Go and put into place schools and technology and people and government and laws and music and art and culture and nations and languages and colors. Take my world somewhere. And whilst you're doing it, I want you to subdue the earth. Harness the natural energy. Be creative. Go and invest in agriculture and commerce and technology and science. I've given you the natural resources. So we've got this mandate, but we've got something else to back us. And what is that? We are the very image bearers of God with a mandate to rule. Let's go on to Genesis chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. Well, we're going to carry on up to 17, but let's have a look at this. Now the Lord God had planted a garden in the east, in Eden, and he put man, and there he put man he had formed. The Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eyes, good for food. And in the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. A river watering the garden flowed from Eden. This is important. We're going to come back to this. For there was, and from there it separated into 4 headwaters. The name of the first is the Pishon. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. And I've used the NIV translation in here because, as you can see up on the screen, it says in verse 12, the gold of that land is good. Now understand this, and it is when God says the gold there is good, it's good. It's the stuff he's using to pave the roads in heaven. He's not giving you stuff that is rubbish. And there is aromatic resin and onyx. Now, for those of you who don't know what onyx is, if you are somebody in society, you have probably got marble floors and marble bathrooms. You've arrived. However, if your floors are onyx and your bathroom is onyx, man, you are super arrived. Onyx often is used as a jewelry stone. It's used as an ornament decorative in jewelry. It's highly, highly valued. The name of the second river is the Gihon. It winds through the entire land of Cush. The name of the third river is the Tigris. It runs along the east side of Ashur. And the fourth river is the Euphrates. And you read this and you stand back and you go, interesting. Who cares? Honestly. And what God is saying is, firstly, I want you to understand I've given you a Eden loaded with natural resources. Not just any natural resources, the very best in natural resources. Full of rivers and woods and grasses and fruit and trees. Then he goes on and he explains these borders. So I thought what I'll do is I'll go and do some research about these borders. My brain works just like Louise. I'll go down any rabbit hole that you throw at me. She's nodding. And I have to give Louise credit because I found a map. She looked at it and she came back and she said to me, bum map. I've got a better one. There we go. So, just so that you understand what you are looking at from a geographical perspective, I found it. So, in terms of geography, that's Mediterranean. This is Red Sea. That is Black Sea. And this is the Caspian Sea. Gihon starts up here in Azerbaijan, crosses into Armenia and comes back into the northern part of Iraq and into Turkey. Pishon is starting up here against the Caspian. We'll wind our way back into the bottom end of Azerbaijan, and guess where we end up? In modern-day Iraq. Up here, we have the Euphrates. Interesting, starts up in Antalya in Turkey, goes all the way west into Syria, cuts Syria in half, and comes down and joins its sister river, which is the Tigris. Starts up in the same area, Turkey, cuts through Syria, comes all the way down. All of this is modern-day Iraq, ends up in the Red Sea. This that you are looking at is Eden. When God says, I'm going to create something, He can't think small. God does big. He's a big God. You know, today we have everything at our disposal. We click our fingers, we switch on iPads, we switch on lights, electricity. But in ancient times, when you consider what God is saying to us, He's saying, I'm giving you timber. What was timber used for? Timber was used for firewood. It was used for implements. It was used for building houses. It was used for building boats. I'm giving you rivers. Why? Because man was established along rivers. Rivers were the arteries of culture and water and food and agriculture. That is what rivers were for. And when you have a look at that picture and you see the vastness of what it is, and you look at Eden, He's telling you in Genesis chapter 2, Eden is alive, it's pulsating, it is teeming. Eden is pure potentiality. And the Lord put man and put him into the garden, and He said, take care of it and work it. So what does that mean? Glad you asked. Tim Keller turns around and tells us that work is rearranging the raw materials of a particular domain to draw out its potential for the flourishing of everyone. And you've got to ask, well, where does he get that? He gets that from Genesis chapter 2. And the nature and the name of our series is called AVODAH, which is the Hebrew word which translated from Hebrew to English is work. It also means the following. It means to cultivate or develop or draw out its potential. You've got to understand that the garden was dynamic. It wasn't static. The creation of man and the creation of Eden was a project. It was not a product. It was never meant to be and stay still. The garden was always designed to go somewhere. Here's what is super important. When we think of the Garden of Eden, we hear the creation story, right? And in our mind, we think of the Garden of Eden. And we think of our local public park patch. We don't have an idea of the vast scale of it. And Adam and Eve get put into the garden and get told, go and tend to it. So in our mind's eye, Eve got given her garden shears. Adam got given a push mower. And understand that at that point, God yet hadn't given us petrol. So Adam got a push mower. And her job was, Eve, go and trim the rosebuds. Adam, have you noticed that there's some avos up there? They're a bit overripe. Best we get them down, boy. No, that wasn't what God had in mind. It was this wild, untamed wilderness, teeming with the most unbelievable natural resources. And His command to Adam and Eve was actually simple. Go and make a world. That's what I want you to do. Go and invent technologies. Go and build roads. Go and build cities. Go and invent science. Bring in music. Bring in art and culture. Make life exciting. His idea was right in the beginning, was he's trying to say to Adam, I need you to mirror heaven. When we get to Revelation 21 and 22, we see that at the end of the age, Jesus comes back. And John the Revelator, now when you go and read that, and I had to go and read it, he's deliberately using Genesis or garden type language. Why? Because when we come back, what does it say? We're going to go and live in a city. What does that city look like? In the middle of the city is a tree. The city has got rivers that run through it. Why would he say that? It's a deliberate copy back to Genesis chapter 1 and 2. He's trying to describe a new Eden. But it's not a garden. It's a garden-like city with trees and leaves and walls and foundations and roads and technology and music. It's full. Why? Why would that be? Think about this. If Jesus is coming back at the end of the age for you and I, and he's taking us back to heaven, wouldn't he want to be taking us back to the very beginning of the creation story? He's not taking us back to something different. He's taking us back into the beginning of Genesis chapter 2, into that idyllic environment that God created right in the very beginning. The garden was never supposed to stay a garden. The garden was always meant to become a garden-like city. Take that. Or don't. Okay. Here's the problem. So we have, let's put it this way. So we got Genesis 1 and 2, and now we know what Genesis 21 and 22 look like. Would you agree with me that between Genesis 1 and 2 and Revelation 21 and 2, there's a lot of Bible down here? There's a lot of Bible. What would happen if we were, let me just put it this way. What happens after Genesis chapter 2? Don't say Genesis chapter 3. That would be Gary's answer. No, it was sin. Sin comes into the world. Theologians call that the fall. And if we were to pull that out of the Bible, we then left with Genesis chapter 1 and Genesis chapter 2 and Revelation 21 and 22. What have we got left? We've got a pamphlet. Because there's nothing else that's left. Here's the problem. Sin comes in Genesis chapter 3 and absolutely screws up the entire world. This world becomes chaotic. That tickled your funny bone. And humans need ruling and order. And our job, yours and my job, is to bring back order into what became disorder or chaos. That's our job. Here's our big problem. We as humans have become out of sync with God. And it is sin. And when you switch on your television, you will see that humans have become a wreck. And we have gone and screwed the place up. So instead of working the earth and looking after it and nurturing it and mothering it, what have we done? We've done exactly the opposite. We've abused it. We've abused and ruined the earth. And the root cause of all of this is, of course, our sin, which is why Jesus came back. And what does he do? He makes you and I new. He recreates you and I. And what does He call us specifically? He says to us, you are my new creation. And when we accept Jesus Christ into our lives, we are immediately set into right standing and we become His new creation. One day, in the hopefully not too distant future, God intends to come back and fix up the entire cosmos. Allow the gravity of that statement to set in. My note said, pause for dramatic effect, but I thought I would. Guess who He's starting with? He's starting with you and I. Why? Why does He start with you and I? 2 reasons. Number 1, we are made in His image. Our job in Genesis chapter 1, right in the beginning, was go and rule and reign in my image. Number 2, what does Jesus say? You are my new creation. Duh. So Jesus is coming back, and He's coming to do what Adam was supposed to have done right in the beginning. He's coming back to do what? To command and to rule. And when we have a look at, particularly in the New Testament, in the Gospels, we see that He is revered. He's looked up to. Why? Because He's called the Messiah. He's called the King of the world. When we go to Matthew 28, it says, then Jesus came to them and said, so this is, just from a contextual perspective, Jesus is crucified, He's resurrected. He hasn't yet gone up to heaven, but He is resurrected. Genesis 28, verses 18 to 20. Came to them and said, all authority in heaven and earth is given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the end of the age. So what does Jesus do at this point? Theologians would like to say that in Genesis 1 and 2, we get given our cultural mandate, go and be fruitful and multiply, subdue the earth. And right here, we get what is called the Great Commission. Go into all the world, baptize and make disciples of all nations. And when you look at this, theologians are going to stand back and they're going to turn around and tell you that what Jesus is actually doing is He's now reframing our original mandate in Genesis 1 and 2, and He's adding a new part to it. So we've got a cultural mandate, and we have a Great Commission. We now end up with a dual calling. Here's our problem. We have the original calling, go and make agriculture, science, medicine, technology, and a second one, go and make people. Go and build people. And how do we do that? We have the gospel, which is the good news. And we go into the world with this cultural mandate, but now with our calling, with the good news and the Holy Spirit. To do what? To restore God's image, not only in ourselves, but in mankind. And we're becoming more and more image bearers of God. Here's the deal. When God is done with you, guess what's waiting for you? You're going up to heaven. You're going to do the very thing that He told man to do in Genesis chapter 1 and 2. We're going to go and live with him in a way where we rule and reign with him. And when he comes back, we are going to look completely different. Man, we are going to look beautiful, and it's going to be exciting. Here's the problem. Between now and then, we need a bit of panel beating, and we need a bit of a paint job and a respray. But we are going to be co-rulers and co-heirs with him. Here's the thing. It's not a choice of this or that. We don't have a cultural mandate and a commission. It's not that. It's an and an and. It's not an and or but. We are commissioned to do both. Here's our problem in modern day society. We want to pick one or the other. So on the one hand, you are great at sharing the gospel. You are brilliant at sharing the gospel. Here's the problem. You just don't shut up. Because you are in a job, you are paid to do something, you are paid to be productive and deliver on time and on mandate. Somebody's paying your salary. But it is not the time to be sitting there and drinking coffee and reading your Bible and slacking off and talking to your fellow colleagues about the Word. It's good. There is a time and there's a place for that. On the other hand, you are brilliant at your cultural mandate. You're brilliant as a businessman. When was the last time you actually used the words of the gospel? Because let's be honest, the gospel is the good news. Now you might get a little bit philosophical and turn around and say, well, Ian, Francis of Assisi turned around and said, go into the world and preach, and if necessary, use words. All good and well, yeah. Bit of a slack off, I get it. But the gospel, as I've just said, is the good news. And we do need to preach with it. When you are slacking off, what kind of message are you sending out into the world as a lousy employee? What we are looking for is a bunch of people who are passionate about getting the gospel out, but at the same time are passionate about culture. And what we're wanting to do is we are wanting to be part of this army of people who are brilliant at what we do, dedicated, hardworking, over-deliver on what we're supposed to be doing, but also carry the fragrance and the aroma of Jesus Christ wherever we go. We want to be part of that army in every city and every nation across South Africa. Why? Because then we've got big corporations like Nissan and Sun International and Walmart and all of these people who are picking up the phone and phoning our church and going, we've got jobs. We hear that you people are brilliant. You switched on. You're dedicated. You're hardworking. You are absolutely the kind of people from a skill set that we're looking for. Wouldn't that be amazing? Here's the thing. We tend to carry our image. And you might be turning around and saying to yourself, well, what I do doesn't really matter, does it? Well, here's what I want you to completely dispel, that is a lie. You know, when you come to work and you have got a brilliant character and a work ethic, and you are doing it as unto the Lord, Jesus sees everything that you're doing. He sees how you do it. What is your attitude? How are you interacting with your staff and with your colleagues around you? And he says this, if you are creating shalom in your workplace, I am with you. I'll back you. I'll promote you. I'll do the best for you. And he gets excited. He gets really excited. He's into your work. Don't think for a minute that he isn't. He's into how you carry yourself at your job. Why? Because we have a dual vocation. At this point, I want to bring up 3 of my friends. Come, friends. Anthony, Justin. Oh, the rose amongst thorns will put you in the middle. What you're looking at is 3 people who take this dual vocational mandate seriously. And I want to give you a glimpse practically as to what this all looks like. And I want to be talking specifically to the young people here who are just starting out. You're finishing studying and you're going working. And, you know, what is this dual vocation? What does this dual mandate look like? I think last week we had Sean, who's sitting here on camera, ask, so practically, what does this look like? Well, take a perch. We're playing truth or dare. Well, I like to start with the ladies. So just because we've got a whole bunch of new people and we are talking live on camera, so I am going to start with the lady in the group. So tell us your name.
Christy.
So for those of you who don't know, Christy, let me give you this. Good idea, good idea, good idea. Are these on, by the way? Let me turn this thing on. And? Good idea. So just so that you know a little bit about Christy, background story, school teacher, mom to 2 phenomenal kids, sportswoman in that she is a competitive equestrian in horse riding, and then wife to Adrian.
It's a tough job.
I leave it right there. We will move right along. Right there, you fulfilled every mandate, right? Picking on Adrian. You recently switched jobs and went, let me not stand with my back to camera and to people. So, Christy, you changed jobs, got into this new role, going from all-girls school, all-boys school. What does your dailiness look like with this full basket that you're carrying with all of these roles? How do you balance all of that out and still fulfill your mandate in what you're called to?
Well, yeah, and I had to laugh when you said, we have to, man is to rule and reign over the chaos and kind of subdue it. You clearly haven't been in my classroom of boys. Yeah, so I think, when you asked me to speak and, you said Ant and Just, I thought, well, sure, these guys are incredibly strong, influential. What am I? And I thought, and it's a lot of what you've said is that the skills that God has given me to work with children. He told me I was going to be a teacher when I was very young, and I would dress up in mom's clothes and teach my teddy bears. And, even through high school when people would say, what are you going to be? I said, I'm going to be a teacher. And you get well, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to look after children? There's no money in that, But I knew that that's what God wanted me to do. And for me, it's not about only the function of being a teacher. How many slices of pizza do you eat if I give you 8 and I eat 6? That's functional. But for me, it's saying, okay, God, help me see those children through your eyes. And he has as I said to you, I hate talking about myself, but I feel like he has gifted me with the ability to connect with those kids that might be written off for whatever reason.
Good.
Like they're the naughty, the labeled ones.
Yeah. Like I was.
Oh, yeah. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, we can talk. So that's, for me, during my day, I try and look at my classroom and see who's quieter than normal, who's playing up.
Very good.
More than normal, because there was always something. And so that's, I mean, I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So that's, for me, what I'm doing on it. So I may not always be preaching, but I'm saying, God, give me the space, the moment to connect with one of those boys or one of those children, whoever it will be. And, I was at St. Mary's for a very, very long time, and I've got kids that were in my class that are finished varsity now. And for me, some of them still come back, or they get in touch, or I see them.
Wonderful.
And just when they say, Flip, thank you for that moment when you said that, or when you walked me through that. And something I may have forgotten, but it made a difference, and that's why I do what I do. And
excellent.
Yeah.
Love it. I'm going to come back to you about something else in a minute.
Oh, no.
And just so that you know what Anthony does, for those of you who don't know, and for the sake of the cameras out there, Anthony holds a significant position in one of South Africa's largest banking corporations, if not South Africa's largest banking corporation. So there, I've just told you without giving you free advertising. So you hold a significant role in this company. You are father to 3 amazing sons. You have the most amazing wife that you look after as a husband. You are a little bit not right in the head because you like to go mountain biking. Lord knows why, but you're a sportsman. And then, of course, you've got the awesome privilege of leading the most absolutely phenomenal, dynamic, most alive, most beautiful home cell in the church. I'm not saying that with any bias at all because I'm in that home cell. Not at all. Your basket is full. You wake up in the morning and you've got all of this that goes through your mind. And you've got to step into each and every one of those roles and deliver your very best. How do you manage that? What does this look like?
Cool. Is it afternoon? Morning. Thanks, Ian. It's my wife who runs the home group. I just do what I'm told.
There you go.
She's the amazing one. And no, thank you. I think every day is different, and there's no formula. And I tried early on in my life to prioritize things in sequential order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that doesn't work. You kill yourself. And so you have to work out what counts for that day. And I don't think any of us have arrived by any stretch of the imagination, but if I can start my day with slices, if you haven't been, just Google slices.org, and you get a daily reading from Michael Eaton, one of the world's foremost theologians. And if I can start my day there with a bit of prayer and a bit of worship and maybe some exercise, that's a great way to start the day. But I don't get it right every day by any stretch of the imagination. And what I've realized is I have to look for the signs when I'm starting to leak or get empty, and my wife helps me there.
Good.
And then you got to tap out, right? You have to tap out, and so I will tap out. I'll go walk around the garden, water the plants, and pray, or listen to a song, or go for a run at lunchtime. Because maybe I didn't start my day praying. But or maybe I've had 2, 3, 4 days without spending time with the Lord. And so you got to recognize when you're actually starting to reach towards the reserve light, and just go refuel. So if you don't do that, you just start to lose, the quality of your image bearing, right?
Good.
It just starts to go awry. I think exercise is so important. you know, in this time of COVID, I've seen so many people hit the wall, have nervous breakdowns. They've realized they don't control the world, and they're not in control of their lives. And firstly, knowing you're a son of the Father gives you that foundation, but then actually just exercising just helps manage stress. So the other thing we do, Ian, is at the end of the day, we'll try and come together as a family and have a meal together. We don't get it right, but between 6 and 8 is family time. And, you know, I won't take calls from my boss then. He'll phone and I say, how's it? Yeah, I'm just having dinner with my family. I'll phone you afterwards. Well, WhatsApp him back, you know. And my team knows I live out my values, and I don't use...
Well done.
I don't use Christian language around it. I just express what my values are. So my team knows family comes first.
Awesome.
For me and for them.
Lovely. Good.
And we live it out.
Very good.
Like, if they're having dinner, I won't bug them.
Mm.
You know, and I'll say, hey, are you having dinner? I need to chat to you about something. And they'll, you know, so we live it out. And there are exceptions. Absolutely, yeah. There are exceptions. But then during dinner time, that family time, 6 to 8, it's phones off on the side. I think we need a phone box, but we're not quite there yet. And it's connect, how's the day? And if we can, we don't get this right all the time, we'll land the day on, and we love Bible Project. Also, go Google Bible Project. It's amazing. And you don't have the energy to sit down and do a whole long Bible story with your kids. They've done it for you. Push play. It's amazing. And you just watch Bible Project together and pray together and then put your kids to bed. And you know, and then if you have to carry on working, you go for it. So that's what we try and do. Don't get it right all the time. But it's an ebb and flow.
Love it.
And yeah, I'll pause there.
Absolutely love it. Justin, a lot of people don't know exactly what you do. They kind of understand that you're a biokineticist. But you're not just a biokineticist, because you have a speciality in working with spinal/brain injury people in terms of whole-of-body rehabilitation. So that in itself, I was thinking whilst I was away on holiday and I was busy putting this preach together, I wanted somebody that would work with their hands, and immediately you jumped to mind. But again, dad to 2 kids, phenomenal wife who has already got her hands full, and then she has you. So we come and stand up here, we'll pray for you, Minnie, and make sure that the abundant blessing of the Lord falls onto you. So you're walking into your day, and every day you're staring at brokenness. How do you approach that? How do you carry God with you into that?
That's not the question you gave me to prep.
Curveball. Truth or dare?
Wow. I think I've got an amazing team. It goes right back to the family. I'm going to get to answer your question, but I think there's a whole foundation that needs to be built before you take it out. So I've got an amazing team which starts at home. Also, amazing team at work itself, but the team has gelled that well because of a foundation that we laid earlier on. I'm reminded of 2 stories actually that probably in my early 20s were brought to mind. The one was a guy, if he is listening, I think he's living in the UK now, Ricky Anderson. He was quite an influential schoolboy at King Edward School, and in the era of Joe Vernickhack and stuff like that. And a question posed to him when he was leading a Student Christian Association was, how did you maintain that when you were at school and rugby and stuff? And he said, I would let everyone know up front who I am. So when they went on rugby tours, the Bible came out immediately. So when people join my practice, when we interview, they immediately know my standards. I put it right down there.
Awesome.
With that in mind, that all my employees know, I love what Ant was saying about values, they know up front. And then I've also put a responsibility on myself, because now I've made myself vulnerable, and they know what I stand for, therefore
Lovely.
I have to live that out. The second to that is, around about the same time, the 95 World Cup, there was a Samoan rugby player called Timo Tagaleo, who used to wear a Colossians 3:23 imprinted on his wrist. And that verse is on all our shirts. And more, because I've got multi-religions working for me, more than me enforcing Christianity upon them was letting them know that whatever we're doing today, when you're not working for me, you're working for God, and God's watching you. So go do it the best you can. But
Well done.
for me now, that's where I'm at the whole time. So we build this foundation, and then we go out into this world. And your question is huge, and that's how I would have liked a year to prep for it. How do I take the brokenness of the physical brokenness of this world? Someone, let's say, who just joined church last week and then lands up in a wheelchair the following week, or someone that the men are familiar with who joins us quite often at Men's Connect, who is a Christian, and I often ask me, why did I have to land up in a wheelchair? I don't have answers why he's in a wheelchair, but I can bring him hope and love. And
Wonderful.
I can try and reflect the love God has for
Awesome.
me onto
Love
him.
hearing that.
Broken people just love to be heard. So all of us will stop and listen. When you come to our practice, it's not a clinic. It's not clinical. It's a holistic place where we listen to your problems. We listen to you. You're heard. Whether you're brain injured and it takes you 10 minutes to mumble out a sentence, you're treated as a person who God created.
Love hearing that.
And I think I answered your question. It was a
Awesome.
curveball.
Just one more part of what people don't quite understand about you is you run a special trust, which is really a foundation for raising money. And we know how active you are in the world's largest organized cycle race, 94.7. You bring that Trojans team with. There's a part of that we don't see in terms of you've got to go out into the world. You've got to engage with corporate South Africa. You've got to engage with top flight CEOs. You've got to organize golf days and get sponsorship. And so you carry this part in fixing people, but you carry another part in walking into corporate boardrooms South Africa. How does that work out?
That one you did give me time to prep for. Ian, it's transparency.
Awesome.
That's all I can say. We're very open, so people know exactly where the money's going. So when generally the proof is in the pudding, and we've proved ourselves, and then we go ask. I'm not asking up front, so it's actually quite easy because go to someone and they say, "Okay, I see what you do."
Awesome. I'm going to land with this just because we're running out of time. Christy, you got your Bible, so you can open that up to 1 Corinthians 3, I think it is. But whilst you're getting there, you come home at the end of a day at school, and you now have to transition to mom, wife, mother. How does that look from a practical perspective? Because there's some people that would be looking at this who are saying, I don't work. I am a full-time mom. I am a wife. I am a mother. My role is here in the family. How do you reconcile what you're doing at school and then at home?
Yeah, I think it's not about compartmentalizing.
Yeah.
So you can list that you're mom, wife, teacher, nurse.
Do you easily shake off the frustrations of the day and carry on as normal at home? Is that an easy job for you to do? Leave the school teacher behind and carry on with the other role?
Yeah, but I think it's like the guy said, you need a space at home.
Yeah.
So very often, like, I'll come home and AD will be my sounding board. And it's not about having someone to solve your problems. It's about, this is what happened, this is what I experienced, and just having that space to just decompress or water the garden, whatever it is. So sometimes for me, it's my riding. I need to go and ride.
Brilliant.
And so I'm not anybody to thing or anything to anybody. It's just me and doing the thing that God has given me a passion for.
Love it.
So, yeah,
Well
it
done.
might be watering the garden. That's not me, but it could be. But, yeah, so I think it's just so important, I think, Ian, just to have a person that you can just have a safe place just to say, this is what happened.
Brilliant.
And a space where you can go and decompress and then do what you need to do.
Brilliant. Dive into, I want you to hit 1 Corinthians 3, verses 5 to 9.
What, after all, is Apollos, and what is Paul? Only servants through whom you came to believe, as the Lord has assigned to each his task. I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God made it grow. So neither he who plants nor he who waters is anything, but only God who makes things grow. The man who plants and the man who waters have one purpose, and each will be rewarded according to his own labor. For we are God's fellow workers. You are God's field, God's building.
I love what Paul is saying here. Listen to the imagery that he is using in 1 Corinthians 3 here. It's garden image. He's talking about planting, church planting, and he's talking about reaping and harvesting. And what he said is for everybody. If you are working in a corporate, it's like gardening. If you're working as a school teacher, it's like gardening. We carry Adam and Eve with us every day. And then he drops that right in. He says, and I'm glad I've got the Greek scholar here, so the Greek scholar can just correct me, where he says that Paul, he and Apollos are God's co-workers. So in the Greek, he's not saying that it is Paul and Apollos that are co-workers. No. He's saying Paul and Apollos are co-workers with God. Look at that language. We are not God's employees. Paul and Apollos were not God's employees. They were, in fact, his partners. And I can bring that up. Because partners is massive. What is the big difference between being an employee versus being a partner? And it's got everything to do with ownership. When you are an employee and you walk into work and your diary is full, and on Tuesday night, your last appointment starts at 5:30 at night, and you know that that thing is going to end at 6:30. You're not a happy person. If you are an owner, an entrepreneur of your own business, and Justin walks in on Monday, tomorrow morning, and he looks through his diary and goes, "Jeez, I'm chock-a-block for the entire week. Yay!" What's the difference? He's an owner. He's excited. What is the message I'm trying to get across? I want to land with this. When you go to work tomorrow, it doesn't matter whether you are the guy with the broom and in your mind you are working for a menial wage, or whether you're the hotshot executive CEO of the corporation. When you get it into your mind that you are partnering with Jesus, you are partnering with God, you are significant. And God is looking for people like you, whether you're pushing a broom or the CEO, so that he could partner with you in taking the world somewhere. You're fulfilling God's mandate. You're walking in the full blessing of what he has asked and called you to be from the very beginning. You are, in God's eyes, a modern-day Adam and Eve. And God is looking for you because He is looking for partners. Amen.